The Citizen Report is a production of New Shannon Media. All content protected under copyright.
Right now on the Citizen Report, breaking news, the Kraken has been released. Sidney Powell files a massive voter fraud lawsuit. The latest details coming up. Also ahead, I'll explain what the Constitution has to say about the election and how it gives President Trump the upper hand. The deep state is panicking as they realize that their attempt to steal a Trump victory from the American people is failing. My commentary and analysis are coming up. The Citizen Report starts now. And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm Jonathan Shannon, and thank you for joining me tonight. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American. Thank you so much for joining me. My co-host David Heller is off tonight. Well, I'm coming to you in audio only tonight. I hope to have the issue resolved, and I hope to be back on video within a week or so. But for right now, me being in audio only will have to do. But at any rate, I got some breaking news to tell you about right now, and that is the attorney Sidney Powell has filed a massive lawsuit, according to the Gateway Pundit. It was a 104-page bombshell complaint, as they put it, of massive fraud in Georgia election. And according to the Gateway Pundit, it turns out that Michigan was also is also part of this. I haven't read through the entire document, but I've skimmed through basically the first bit and then towards the end maybe. Well, at least the first part. But just to say, this is, at first, by all appearances, this is a huge lawsuit. Just the main pointer on this, the main takeaway with this, is that she's alleging basically that there wasn't just fraud; it was a massive voter fraud, and of course, we've already seen plenty of evidence to that effect. But basically, I want to draw your attention to page 2 as I'm looking at this. And again, you're not able to see this right now, and I do apologize. But if you go to Gateway Pundit and you find this article, it's published November 25th at 11:05 p.m. They actually provide a link to this document, so please be sure to go check that out. But I'm going to skip down, as I said, to page 2, and by the way, the title of this document is titled as follows: Complaint for Declaratory Emergency and Permanent Injunctive Relief. So obviously she puts a lot of teeth in this document, as to be expected from Sidney Powell, because she doesn't kid around, that's for sure. Now, on page 2, as I said, here, I'm going to read to you a portion of this, and this is what it reads. Quote, "As a civil action, the plaintiff's burden of proof is a preponderance of the evidence to show, as the Georgia Supreme Court has made clear, that I was not incumbent upon plaintiff to show how the voters would have voted if their absentee ballots had been regular. Plaintiff only had to show that there were enough irregular ballots in place in doubt the result." And continuing on, this is looks like, if I'm saying this right, section 2, which is on page 3. It says, "The scheme and artifice to defraud was for the purpose of illegally and fraudulently manipulating the vote count to make certain the election of Joe Biden as President of the United States." Section 3. "The fraud was executed by many means, but the most fundamentally troubling, insidious, and egregious is the systemic adaptation of old-fashioned ballot stuffing. It has now been amplified and rendered virtually invisible by computer software created and run by domestic and foreign actors for that very purpose. Mathematical and statistical anomalies rising to the level of impossibilities, as shown by affidavits of multiple witnesses, documentation, and expert testimony, evidence this scheme across the state of Georgia." Especially egregious conduct arose in Forsyth, Paulding, Cherokee, Hall, and Barrow County. This scheme and artifice to defraud affected tens of thousands of votes in Georgia alone and rigged the election in Georgia for Joe Biden. Interesting to note here, and I just now noticed this. This is me talking here. Interesting to note here, I just noticed that at the bottom of this page, there's a footnote, and it's the second footnote of this document, but the second footnote appears on page 3, and I'm trying to be descriptive as I can because, again, you're not seeing this, you're just having to listen to me describe this, but what it basically says is, and I may not be pronouncing this right, and my apologies in advance, but it basically says 50 USC, which I'm guessing refers to United States Code 2070, requires retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections, deposit with custodian, penalty for violation, but as will be shown, wide pattern of misconduct with ballots show preservation of election records have not been kept, and Dominion logs are only voluntary with no system-wide preservation system. Now that's an interesting tidbit of information right there, because I wasn't actually aware that Dominion was making their log retention, the retention of data, their logs, if you will, voluntary. Now, and again, this is me talking here, but it's interesting that you have these cases emerge where it's basically being revealed that as I understand it, and I could be wrong, but as I personally understand it, the manual for operating these electronic voting machines, they actually have encoded in the procedure for operating these systems the ability to override remotely the information on the ballot. Like I'm reading into this. I'm not saying that this is 100% infallibly true, but this is me interpreting this. So basically, as I'm personally simulating in my mind, thinking about this, let's say you have a ballot for Donald Trump. Well, let's say that person perhaps either, let's assume for the sake of argument it was a paper ballot. So if there was a vote for Donald Trump and for some reason it wasn't being read correctly, if there was an error arising from it, and it doesn't, regardless of the nature of the vote, in terms of who it was, how it was done, however it reaches the point where it has to be manually overridden, basically someone at a different location can override that. Now, it doesn't take anybody with any level of imagination to suppose, to guess that it's very much possible that somebody far away can basically alter the vote and, to be something that the ballot did not actually show. In fact, I just remembered this too, that in Georgia, in one of their recount sessions, it was discovered that there was a whole bunch of ballots for Trump that had been mistakenly counted for Biden, as I understand it. So, and this is just Georgia. I mean, I haven't really even touched on other states for the most part in this episode so far. But just to say, it's just absolutely ridiculous that we have this situation where basically there's not just here or there discrepancies. It's literally just a plethora, just a wash in fraud. And I just think that all of this, when this is all said and done, there's going to have to be major change here, because what is becoming very clear is that there was a widespread conspiracy. Just to be clear, I believe that this was a widespread conspiracy to steal this election, not just from Donald Trump. That was the most important won for obvious reasons, but you have all these other races. Let's take, for instance, here in North Carolina. Supposedly, Governor Cooper won re-election. Now, are you really going to sit there and try to convince me that somehow people actually voted for Trump and also for Roy Cooper for governor? I mean, does that even begin to make sense? Of course it doesn't. It'd be like the disciples taking sides with both Jesus and Judas at the exact same time. It's absolutely a disgusting. It just doesn't. Anybody with any reasonably minded person would not draw that conclusion, because, in going back to Roy Cooper, he has put in all these restrictions here locally, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But just to say, for now, when you look at President Donald Trump, he's all about liberty, giving the power back, taking the power back that was stolen from the people, that was being exercised by the deep state in Washington, and giving that power back to the American people. That's what President Trump is all about. That is exactly what his presidency is all about. And yet, you basically have a situation where, like here in North Carolina, you have an election where supposedly Trump won, and then also Cooper won. That's pretty much the complete opposite. He basically is the governor that says, you will do what I say. You're not allowed to question my authority. I am God of North Carolina, and I answer to nobody. That is the level of arrogance this man has. And I'm talking about Governor Cooper. I'm not saying he's actually claiming to be God. I may have taken that a bit too far, but my point being is that there's a lot of things in all of these various states that just do not add up. And then you have, in the case of, I believe, Detroit, Michigan, someone can correct me if I'm getting that wrong, but there was in one of these swing states. I'll just make it general. Let me forget I said Detroit. Just in general, there in one of these swing states in a major city, all these ballots mysteriously appears in the middle of the night. And in fact, separate to that, in Wisconsin, if you look at a graph showing the counts for votes for Trump and Biden, Trump was ahead of Biden, and then all of a sudden there was a straight up for Biden, to catch up with Trump. And then from there, basically Biden pretty much had it, or at least, it was neck and neck. And, when you're counting ballots, it's statistically impossible to have precincts that are counting almost completely for one person. Yes, I know that you can have a supermajority, you can have a landslide. I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about where you have 95% plus for one person. In the county where I grew up, Boone County, Arkansas, I'm not sure what the final count is, but I believe at last check, Trump basically got 80% of the vote in that county. So obviously, an absolute landslide. 8 out of 10 people statistically voted for Trump in that county, unless that, of course, changed. But what strikes me is the level of arrogance of the Democrats to think that they can do whatever they want, they can steal this election, and we're not allowed to question it. Let me shift my focus to the mainstream media. So, for 4 years now, we have had an absolute collusion delusion garbage where they basically have been claiming that Trump is a surrogate of Vladimir Putin. And as ridiculous as that notion seems, because I believe if you're listening to my show, you're not, deluded like that. You're at least able to think critically. And yet the media, for 4 straight years, have done nothing but attack Trump and accuse him of working with Russia in some nefarious way. And their attack on General Flynn, and by the way, I'll get to him in a moment too, their attack against General Flynn was one manifestation of that, because they went after this man for 4 straight years. And as from what I've heard, he has the goods on a lot of deep staters. And they're terrified of him. And they should be. From all I can tell, they should absolutely be terrified of him. And, well, tell you what, since I mentioned General Flynn, let me go ahead and get to this. So, General Flynn, as I just said, his life was just absolutely just torn asunder. I mean, they destroyed his livelihood for 4 years, and finally he got, as I understand it, Sidney Powell was brought on to help him with his legal case. And boy, she let that judge have it. And that judge, let's remember this. Earlier this year, and I really want you to stop, to really just pause for a second and digest what I'm fixing to say here. And I want you to ask yourself the question as I'm talking. Does this even begin to make sense within the scope of logic of due process? So earlier this year, now before this, I'm not sure if it was this year or last year, but a good while back now, General Flynn, he had initially pled guilty. This case goes back, I believe, to 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And he basically withdrew his guilty plea at some point later on. Basically, he was basically there was a trap set for him. I mean, he's completely innocent, and yet they set a trap for him. But he ultimately did withdraw his guilty plea, which means they have no case. Or if they want to pursue the case, they have to prove it now. If you're pleading guilty, that's different than pleading innocent. Because if you plead innocent, then the plaintiff, in this case the United States, has to prove its case before the court. And in fact, the U.S. Department of Justice withdrew its case. They said, okay, we're not going to pursue this matter anymore. We're withdrawing this. Here's the exculpatory evidence. And by the way, exculpatory evidence basically means that it's evidence that proves someone to be innocent. And so there was no prosecutor at this point. And yet, what did Judge Sullivan do? He held up this case for several months. General Flynn should have been free. He should have never been charged in the first place. This should have never have happened. But given that it did happen, it should have been over with at the latest by this spring. And yet, only this past day, now we're going into Thanksgiving, and by the way, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. But President Trump finally said, I've had enough. I am pardoning him, and that's it. We're done. And the deep state, they just lost there's been yet another door closed on them. This is the kind of people that we're up against. They want to absolutely destroy this republic. They want to take down American patriots like General Flynn. And in fact, speaking of the pardon, I want to read to you the statement from the White House regarding General Flynn. This is from whitehouse.gov, and the title of it is Statement from the Press Secretary regarding executive grant of clemency for General Michael T. Flynn. It says, and I quote, "Today, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive grant of clemency granting a full pardon to General Michael T. Flynn. The president has pardoned General Flynn because he should never have been prosecuted. An independent review of General Flynn's case by the Department of Justice, conducted by respected career professionals, supports this conclusion. In fact, the Department of Justice has firmly concluded that the charges against General Flynn should be dropped. This full pardon achieves that objective, finally bringing to an end the relentless partisan pursuit of an innocent man." General Flynn should not require a pardon. He is an innocent man. Even the FBI agents who interviewed General Flynn did not think he was lying. Multiple investigations have produced evidence establishing that General Flynn was the victim of partisan government officials engaged in a coordinated attempt to subvert the election of 2016. These individuals sought to prevent Donald Trump from being elected to the presidency, to block him from assuming that office upon his election, to remove him from office after his inauguration, and to undermine his administration at every turn. The prosecution of General Flynn is yet another reminder of something that has long been clear. After the 2016 election, individuals within the outgoing administration refused to accept the choice the American people had made at the ballot box and worked to undermine the peaceful transition of power. These efforts were enabled by a complicit media that willingly published falsehoods and hid inconvenient facts from public view, including with respect to General Flynn. They amounted to a brazen assault on our democracy and a direct attack on our fundamental political values. While today's action sets right an injustice against an innocent man and an American hero, it should also serve as a reminder to all of us that we must remain vigilant over those in whom we place our trust and confidence. The people who sit atop our intelligence and law enforcement agencies have tremendous power to affect the lives of their fellow citizens. The American people must always take care to scrutinize their actions, to hold them accountable, and to ensure that they use their immense power to uphold the rule of law rather than to harass, persecute, and jail their political opponents in pursuit of partisan political agendas. Happy Thanksgiving to General Flynn and his family, and thank you all for your great service to our nation. And that's the conclusion of that statement. I must say, now, the only thing is I wish they would say republic, not democracy, but other than that, ignoring that, this is a very well written statement, and it very clearly states that this was only done because of an injustice. General Flynn, as it said, should not have needed this if justice had gone the way it should. And it brings me back to this thought that one of the basic tenets of our justice system is Lady Justice. Lady Justice, if you've ever seen a picture of like a statue or whatever, she's got both of her eyes covered, with a blindfold. And the reason for that is because when justice goes the way it's supposed to go, it's supposed to be weighing the evidence against someone or for someone. And by, basically blind justice protects the innocent and also ensures justice of the guilty. And the fact that we had a judge like Judge Sullivan, it completely violates every tenet of that notion. I would hope that General Flynn, or I should say, I would hope that Judge Sullivan, I would hope that Judge Sullivan is not only removed from the bench, but completely disbarred. And frankly, and this is me, and I'm not the one to make this kind of call, but it seems only reasonable that he himself is criminally liable, because it's so obvious that he had a role to play. The deep state had him in there. Obama was probably giving him orders, and we know if you've listened to and again, I can't use the letter, because of YouTube's algorithms. But substituting the letter for the phrase Patriot Intelligence Insider, we'll call it that, has basically inferred that Obama has had a shadow presidency to try to subvert Trump, to try to usurp Trump. This President Obama, former President Obama, he should be charged with treason. And in fact, speaking of which, I'm going to try to pull it up here. And I would dare say that when and this goes back to post number 894. This is dated March 9, 2018, and it contains an anonymous poster posted a picture showing Trump with his finger pointed at Obama, and it says, and I'm not saying that he actually said this, but this is what the meme says, and it says, quote, "When I'm done, it'll be like you were never even here." And the Patriot Intelligence Insider responds to that. It's got a picture of the Punisher logo below that. And then the Patriot Intelligence Insider says, "When we're done, he'll claim Kenyan citizenship as a way to escape." Now, we already know that it's Malik Obama. I believe, going off of memory, let me make sure I get that right before I say. Malik Obama... Yes. Okay. According to Wikipedia, well, Google in Wikipedia, they say he's the older half-brother of Barack Obama. And he basically said, and by the way, he's a Trump supporter, I might add, which I bet is a pain in the side of Barack Obama. I bet Barack Obama despises that fact, but I digress. He has previously posted a picture purported to show a birth certificate of Barack Obama in that originated out of Kenya. Now, we already know that Sheriff, let's see, I can't remember, Arpaio. I'm pulling this out in real time. I'm pulling this up. Do bear with me for one moment, but I will just tell you that there was an investigation conducted on there was basically forensic analysis done on the Obama birth certificate, and it was determined that it was a fraud. Okay, this is from East Valley. Okay, this is from EastValleyTribune.com. It says Arpaio, and remember, Arpaio used to be. He is the now former Maricopa County Sheriff. Maricopa County is in Arizona, by the way. This is what the article reads. And it says, quote, this article, let's see, from March 1st, 2012, and it reads, "The birth certificate which Barack Obama says proves he is a U.S. citizen is a fraud," Maricopa County Sheriff Joe Arpaio charged Thursday. The sheriff said a forensic examination of the electronic document posted last year by the White House proves that it was not simply scanned into a file, but actually put together in several pieces. And Mike Zullo, head of the sheriff's cold case Pose, who headed the investigation, said the inconsistencies in the document cannot be explained away by claims that it was optimized or had been scanned with optical character recognition software. I don't need to go any further. Now, why did I bring all this up right now? Part of the reason why I just brought that up was because I think it's important to remember that Obama, and basically everything he has, is because the deep state gave it to him. I mean, he is not even his own person. He's been basically given everything. He's not even a Manchurian candidate, really. I mean, he was just a puppet, and a pretty lousy one at that. And I think the Patriot Intelligence Insider is what he was getting at the time, and I believe it still stands true today, that when it finally all hits the fan, if you will, on Trump, or I should say, when it finally all hits the fan on Obama, when all the evidence comes out against Obama, it will be so damning that Obama will literally try out of desperation to claim that somehow because he's a Kenyan citizen, he can kind of, get out from under that. Now, we'll have to see how that plays out, whether or not it proves to be true. But the article I just read to you, that was an actual article that was mentioning Sheriff Arpaio, and that article, again, was from 2012. So... but I want to go back to the constitutionality of the election, because I think it's important for people to understand that the rules are not arbitrary. They are very, very clear. Very, very clear on how the election is to work. Now, I'm going to pull up here, and you'll have to bear with me for 1 second here, but I'm going to pull up for you the information that regarding the Constitution, and basically, if I can get it to pull up, but I'm just going to be talking as I try to pull it up. But basically, what you need to know is that they're trying to skirt the rules, and that's what the deep state does. They do it all the time. It's nothing new. They tried to basically, they were trying, like, all year long, they were trying to cite the pandemic as the reason to change how the election works. But you cannot change the Constitution with court rulings and, statutory and or executive order actions. And in fact, here is what it says. I'm going to go to, this is the Constitution, Article 2, Section 1. Yeah, Article 2, Section 1. Bear with me here. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 4. I'm trying to get it pulled up here. All right, here we go. Well, disregard the clause. I'm just going to say Article 2, Section 1. I'm going to read this section to you. Here's what it says. And this is about the presidency. The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the vice president chosen for the same term be elected as follows. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislator thereof may direct. I'll come back to that in a second. Continuing here. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislator thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. And I want you to listen closely here. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons, of whom one at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. And they shall make a list of all the persons voted for, and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify, and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. The President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes shall be the President, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And if there be more than one who have such majority and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot one of them for president. And if no person have a majority, then from the 5 highest on the list, the said House shall in like manner choose the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states. The representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. In every case, after the choice of the president, the person having the greatest number of votes of the electors shall be the vice president. But if there should remain 2 or more who have equal votes, the Senate shall choose from them by ballot the vice president. Now, why did I read all this to you? Because here's the thing, and it goes, all this is interconnected. Everything I mentioned about Obama, their attempt to go after General Flynn, it's all interconnected because they're terrified. Because Trump literally is taking the power away from Washington, D.C., the centralized bureaucracy, and giving it back to the American people. And he says that we're giving the power back to the American people. And I think that people that they seem to overlook that too much. No, Trump literally means he's giving you and I the power. If you're an American citizen, he wants to give you back all the authority that belongs to you, because after all, the Constitution does not begin with some name of a president or a judge or the legislator. It begins with the phrase "we the people." That basically means that we, the American people, created our government, and the government itself only exists by the consent of the governed. Period. Without our consent, the government doesn't have any say-so. That's why I say, and I've said this before, that these governors that are issuing these edicts have absolutely no right, because they derive their authority from we the people. Period. On all levels of government, down to every government employee is directly answerable to the American people. And if they do something that's untoward towards the American people have a right and duty to hold them accountable through elections. Now, the problem, though, is these elections, they have been trying to steal it, like Dominion. We've had, they're sending, as I understand, the early votes with these systems were literally being sent to foreign servers to be stored. Now, someone explain to me, how in the world can an American election have any, why is it that our data from such votes why are they being sent to another country? We are supposed to be a sovereign country. I don't care what excuse, I don't care if it's somehow convenient. You can find a server in the United States to store them on. And my point, what I'm trying to get at, is that should raise a huge red flag. But the reason why I mentioned the Constitution and read it to you, because it's important to remember that the state legislators of each state, the legislative branch of each state, that's the House and Senate. In most states, you have a House and Senate. I believe in Nebraska, they have a slightly, I believe the term is unicameral system. I'm not sure if that's right, but generally speaking, you have a House and Senate in each state. You certainly have a legislative branch in each state. It is the power of deciding the electors for this electoral college. It comes down to the legislative branch of each state. It does not come down to the governor, and that's why you have Governor Wolf in Pennsylvania. He's in hot water because here he is. He was basically trying to change the rules of the election. You cannot do that. In Georgia, you also had I can't remember every detail about it, so I won't say too much about it because I don't want to say something that's inaccurate, but suffice it to say, you have in the state of Georgia, generally speaking, the governor and the secretary of state, they have some questions to answer about why it is that the procedures and all that Why are you making changes to how an election is done? The power to decide how an election is conducted is vested solely in the legislative branch, period. There's no wiggle room there. A judge cannot step in and change that. A governor cannot step in and change it. Not the lieutenant governor, none of them. Only the legislator of each state, period. They set the rules, and that's it. Now, I say set the rules. I don't mean they just have a free-for-all and just go nuts with it. I mean, they do have standards per the Constitution that they are supposed to abide by even still. But my point being is that these governors that think they can make these rules and try to change things and extend deadlines, you can't do that. Now, in the Constitution, in that portion I read to you, and I'm going to try to get it back up here. If there's a dispute, basically, if there's no person with a majority, actually it says, and if there be more than one who have such majority and have an equal number of votes, then the House of Representatives shall immediately choose by ballot one of them for president. And then skipping down further along, it says, but in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having one vote. Okay, so yes, it's the House of Representatives. Yes, for now at least. Nancy Crazy Pelosi is still the Speaker of the House. I mean, more like mumbler of the House. She presides over the House. But let's be clear, the Constitution doesn't give her wiggle room to put in who she wants. It is very clear that each state gets one vote in such a scenario. Now, how many state legislators, I should say, are Republican? I'm going to literally Google that right now. According to ballotpedia.org, I'm going to pull this up and make sure I'm accurate. And bear with me here. Okay, so here it is. As of basically after the November 2018 election, the breakdown of the chamber control is as follows. Now it's basically, I'm assuming by chamber they're also breaking down not just each legislator of the state, but also the House and Senate, if there is both, of each state. So basically, but regardless, this will give you a very clear picture on what's going on here, how things are shaping up. So basically, Democrats controlled, it looks like, 37 chambers. The Republicans, however, controlled 61 chambers. So if it comes down to that, the Republicans have indisputably, above reproach, a massive majority over the Democrats in terms of legislators. So Trump is on the up and up with that. But what I and others believe will actually happen is that these court cases that Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell are currently pursuing, ultimately it will end up at the Supreme Court. Now, I think it's very interesting that the deep state, I believe, as do others, they were literally trying to keep Ruth Bader Ginsburg going as long as they could. They were hoping that she could outlive Trump's presidency, and they could install who they wanted to replace her. Well, that didn't work. She passed, and Amy Coney Barrett took her seat. Replaced what had been her, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat in the Supreme Court. So even if John Roberts goes AWOL, we should have a majority in favor of Trump with that. Now, it's not to say, I'm not saying that to mean that they're just going to blindly vote for Trump just because he's Trump. No. we have a court now that is constitutional majority. We have a majority of justices that respect the Constitution. And they will follow the rule of law. That's what Trump's doing. That's what he's doing with these legal teams. The reason why they're following these smaller courts right now is so that they are following the rule of law. They are following the rule of law. And when it finally gets up to the Supreme Court, they will have followed the rule of law, and the Supreme Court will interpret the rule of law, will interpret the merits, the facts of the matter, and then basically they will make their decision. So I believe that the mainstream media, they are panicking like there's no tomorrow. If you listened, X22 Report did, as always, does an excellent job. And you really need to be listening to his broadcasts if you're not listening already. He played a soundbite showing the end of a press conference at the White House press briefing room where these reporters, you could sense the fear and panic as I'm going off of memory here. I do not remember for sure if Trump was actually there in the press, was the one leaving the press briefing room. But whoever it was that was leaving the press briefing room, you could tell, you could sense the panic, like, why won't you answer our question? Like, you could just sense, like, it was like desperation. So the deep state, the mainstream media, of course, they're one of the same. They are trying as hard as they can to push the propaganda as much and as hard and as far as they possibly can. Is it going to work? Absolutely not. People are more awake now than they have ever been before. They understand what the mainstream media is about. They project fear. If you turn on, they'll tell you about COVID. Well, actually, as you go about in life, yes, you have those that still just, blindly say that, you're gonna kill grandma if you don't wear a mask. Oh, well, yeah, about that, I have this to get to, but I won't get to that yet because I'm still talking about this election thing. But actually, masks don't do a thing. Not substantially, okay? But basically, but let me just say, as to the election, that the mainstream media, they're trying to say President-elect Biden, they're trying to say, oh, Biden's going to do this, Biden's going to do that. You see Biden coming out on stage with this ridiculous office of the President-elect. And by the way, office of the President-elect does not exist. Constitutionally, you only actually, for all legal purposes, if you will, officially you do not become president-elect until the Electoral College has voted. And right now we are far from over in this matter. And what you're seeing them trying to do with this office of the president-elect is they're trying to shape a narrative. They're trying to get you to believe that, yes, Biden is the duly elected, person that's going to be the next president. I will tell you right now, that is not going to work. And I go back to what I said a moment ago. When this is all said and done, I believe, as do others, that the election, the amount of voter fraud is going to be so rampant. It's going to be so undeniably widespread that the American people, you don't need 100%, by the way, but a substantial portion of the American people, they are going to demand that justice be served. Now, I want to get to this, and and then based on I'm doing a search right now on Twitter. I doubt that they will try to, well, actually they do, they allowed me to see this. I want you to listen to what Joe Biden, in his own words, had to say. Hopefully this plays out okay with this microphone I'm using. And Just take a listen. I think many of you may have already heard this, but just listen carefully to what he has to say. Now, he's not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, okay? So, in a way, he basically admitted what he knew and what, the deep staters knew that they were going to do. So he's not sharp in the sense that he just admitted it, but also not sharp in the sense that he basically just self-incriminated, okay? Because you can't, when you are involved with voter fraud, that's an act against this country, quite frankly. But take a listen to what Joe Biden had to say, and again, hopefully it plays out. And I'll paraphrase what he says after the soundbite.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
All right, and let me play for that again. I'm going to turn my mic in the direction of the sound so you can maybe hear it better. Let me play it for you one more time just to make sure you hear it. And give you the best chance of hearing it clearly. So give me 1 second. I'm going to play it again one more time.
We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
So he thinks that they put together the most extensive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. Okay? Now, someone could plausibly say that, oh, he just goofed up. He's just Uncle Joe, don't you know? he just said it and he didn't really mean it. I think he knew exactly what he was saying, but I think he's so out of it, he didn't even really realize that he even said it. Okay? And it's just pathetic, quite frankly. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, the fact that we even have a soundbite like this is just ridiculous. Now, I just think that all of this is going to change very soon. I truly believe that God ordained for Trump to have 2 terms. And you know something? I don't really care what people think of me for saying this. I truly believe that that Trump's God's anointed. Certainly, I believe God's will that Trump be president. Look what Trump did in Israel. Okay? He has done so much for Israel. He recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Israel. He also recognized the Golan Heights region as being, part of Israel. And I'm kind of segueing here a little bit. I don't know if I should, but I just have to say, I am so sick and tired of Christians that think they can't be political. I don't know what to say, but I think it's absolutely ridiculous that here you have President Trump that is probably the most pro-life president we've ever had, okay? And he's put people in the Supreme Court who are pro-life, frankly, as best as I can tell. And yet Christians are like, you know something? I'm going to go for Joe Biden because, yes, he's pro-choice, but, he's not Trump. It's like, are you kidding me? I mean, seriously. I don't even know what to say. It should be so self-evident. It should be so self-evident. Okay? I maybe hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say, but basically, if you're a Christian, there's absolutely no reason that you should be outside of politics. Because if we're not involved in politics, guess who will? Yeah, the lost people. The people who are not Christians. Okay? So It just amazes me, really, that to this day we still have Christians that are either lukewarm or they just don't support Trump because for one reason or another. It's just ridiculous. Now, I want to talk about a couple more things before I wrap up here, and I am starting to run out of time here pretty soon. The first thing I want to mention is Joe Biden and the Ukrainian thing, because we have all this election situation right now, it doesn't mean that this other stuff has gone by the wayside. And this is pretty old stuff, but I think it's important to basically reiterate that Joe Biden has been on record. He has been on record basically saying that if, telling a prosecutor that they're going to hold up $1 billion to Ukraine unless they fired the prosecutor looking into, I believe it was his son's dealings with an oil company. And, the thing is that why would you appoint someone on a board of an oil company if you don't have any experience whatsoever in that sector, let alone, having a high-end paying job like that, a high influential position like that, just by virtue of your dad being a vice president? I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. But it's absolutely ridiculous. And I want to play this clip if I can pull it up. It's not long, but I think it's important for me to play this for you because it's, I think, good to keep this in your consciousness, because I think when this is all said and done, this is going to be, the thing is, the hunters have become the hunted. The hunters, I mean, the people from the Obama administration, the deep state, the Democrats, they have now become the hunted. And the things that they have accused Trump of, Trump is not only innocent of, they were actually projecting their crimes. And I'm talking about the Obama administration. They were projecting their crimes, inverting it, saying Trump and his administration did it when it was the exact opposite. I want you to listen to this clip, and again, most likely, most of you, if not all of you, have heard this at some point, but I think it's important to keep this in, as I said, in your consciousness, because when this is all said and done, I do believe that at the end of the day, there will be legal action in this matter, because this is video, this is irrefutable confession of quid pro quo. If I'm using the legal terminology right, but I digress. I'm going to let the soundbite speak for itself. I'm going to turn my mic around here so make sure you can hear it all right. And here we go. Actually, I'll have to just read it to you because basically I'm going to have to read to you the transcript because it's I just realized the volume on the video is actually on the soundbite would be pretty low, so I'm going to actually just have to read to you. Thankfully, they provide a transcript below that, so just listen to me as I read the transcript. Here we go. I remember going over and convincing our team, others, to convince that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kiev. And I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor. And they didn't. So they said they had. They were walking out to a press conference. I said, nah, I'm not going to, or we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said, I said, call him. And then there was laughter in the audience as Biden is saying this. Continuing on. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here, and I think it was about 6 hours. I looked at them and I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. And there was laughter again in the audience. Continuing here, what Biden said, he got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time, unquote. So basically, Biden is admitting to influencing a foreign government, literally influencing a foreign government and holding like a carrot stick, dangling this carrot saying, you're not going to get this $1 billion unless you fire that state prosecutor. Okay? But think about everything they have put Trump through for the last 4 years. Everything they accused him of, Trump was completely innocent of, and yet they're guilty of. See, this is the thing. I don't think any of us expects anybody to be perfect, because none of us are perfect. But I'll tell you, one thing that I think we can all agree on is that hypocrites are pathetic. And this is exactly what it is. It's hypocrisy. To put it mildly. Frankly, it's illegal. As it should be. Illegal. But going back to, and I want to hit on this real quick. And I'm running out of time here, but I want to mention a medical journal that was from November 18th. So this is only a few days ago. The title of this article, and this is from Annals of Internal Medicine. It was a randomized controlled trial. And the title, and this is their original research, and the title of this research reads, Effectiveness of Adding a Mask Recommendation to Other Public Health Measures to Prevent SARS-CoV-2 Infection in Danish Mask Wearers. So basically the objective of this trial was to see how masks interacted with the virus, I guess. The background reads, and I quote, Observational evidence suggests that mask wearing mitigates transmission of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, or SARS-CoV-2. It is uncertain if this observed association arises through protection of uninfected wearers, or that's to say protective effect, via reduced transmission from infected mask wearers, that's to say source control, or both. And the objective was to assess whether recommending surgical mask use outside the home reduces wearers' risk for SARS-CoV-2 infection in a setting where masks were uncommon and not among recommended public health measures. And this was done back in April and May 2020, and at the top of the page it has a date of 18 November 2020, but the trial, the test was actually run in April and May of this year in the country of Denmark. And it says participants, adults spending more than 3 hours per day outside the home without occupational mask use. And then it says, here's and this is going to get a little bit technical, what I'm fixing to read here, but I think it's important that I read this. Here's what, and I may not be saying all of these terms exactly right, but hopefully you get the gist of it. It says results. A total of 3,030 participants were randomly assigned to the recommendation to wear masks, and 2,994 were assigned to control. 4,862 completed the study. Infection with SARS-CoV-2 occurred in 42 patients recommended masks, which is 1.8%, and 53 controlled participants, that's 2.1%. The between group difference was negative 0.3% point, and it provides some mathematical stuff. I'm going to skip over that. Continuing here, multiple imputation accounting for loss to follow up yielded similar results. Although the difference observed was not statistically significant, the 95% CIs are compatible with a 46% reduction to a 23% increase in infection. Here's the conclusion, and if you tuned out while I was reading all that, listen to this. This is the critical part. Conclusion. The recommendation to wear surgical masks to supplement other public health measures did not reduce the SARS-CoV-2 infection rate among wearers by more than 50% in a community with modest infection rates, some degree of social distancing, and uncommon general mask use. The data were compatible with lesser degrees of self-protection. I'm going to stop right there. But this is the thing. You know, the Governor Cooper, and that's my current governor here in North Carolina, he says, and I'm paraphrasing, but the spirit of it is, he says that the science is clear. The science is, that he talks about the science, but and this is me talking here. The science is never settled. The whole notion of science is to ask questions. And this governor acts like, oh, it's all a concluded fact. Oh, really? And I'm paraphrasing, to kind of take from what David X22 report says. Okay, well, let's see the tests. Let's see how a bandana works. Let's see how all these different masks work and how they interact with the virus. Because remember, the virus is very, very small. When you compare like something like water vapor or and I'm trying to think of other things, but like dust and, whatever, things floating in the air that are invisible. The virus is so incredibly small. And if you were to zoom in close on a mask, what you would probably find more than likely is a woven pattern, especially with the fabric type. But the virus will just go right through that for the most part. And the point being, this mask stuff has nothing to do with health. It has everything to do with controlling you. This is going to lead into mandatory vaccines. Yes, I know President Trump has been pushing for the vaccine, but let me be very, very clear in saying Trump is not going to make it mandatory. He has made it clear it's not going to be mandatory. But there are certain people that will never feel confident ever living their life again unless if there's a vaccine. You're just going to have those kind of people. So once we have a vaccine, and basically we're going to have emergency authorization use that it's going to be they're going to try to get that through next month, December. And it's starting to appear as though in December we're going to actually start to see the vaccine come online. So at that point, these governors are not going to have anything. They're not going to have any ability to have anything to say at that point. They're these people that continue to lock things down, like like the Arkansas governor. He's a rhino. He I think ordered that restaurants stop doing dine-in. My governor, Governor Cooper here in North Carolina, has basically said that you now must wear your mask even at the dinner table at a restaurant, unless if you're eating, which is so moronic, because all of a sudden, if I'm eating, I'm not spreading the virus, right? And it's just so ridiculous. I mean, it should be so self-evident what this is all really about. I think that the deep state, their attempt to take away our rights, it's going to ultimately fail. And like X22 report, like what Dave says on there, we should be thankful that we're not dealing with another, with a war of guns and such, because, the founding fathers, they warned us that there would come a time where we would have to fight for our rights again. And we're there right now. So we should be grateful. And this is one of those things I think we can all be thankful for this Thanksgiving. That we don't have to go to war. We don't have to take our guns and go out in the streets and fight a foreign army on our soil. This war is an information war. It is a political war. And frankly, a health war. A biological war, if I may say so. So, I do believe Trump is going to win. He's going to get reelected. And by the way, just to be clear, I may not have said this before on this episode, but I truly believe that Trump did, in fact, win in a landslide. They have, for the longest time, have used these systems to basically take control of how the voting took place. They would run algorithms that would say, okay, for every one vote, we're going to give 1.25 to one candidate. And, my point being is that they were for the longest time, they were basically rigging the election. Trump and the Patriots, they are forcing this demonic voting system out into the open. And now everyone can see. Everyone can see it now. And when this is all said and done, I do believe that there's going to be change for the better. Don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. Stop listening to mainstream media. Now, it's okay. Listen to them a little bit once in a while to see what they're up to and what they're saying. But, so you're all the wiser about what they're up to. But my point being is that, and unfortunately, this now includes Fox News. Really, Fox News is always, they figured out what sells. But now their true colors are being shown. Now, I'm not talking about Hannity. I'm not talking about Judge Jeanine. But when it comes down to it, whether you get a paycheck or if you tell the truth, for many people, it's going to be the paycheck that they choose. And I think that's, I won't name names, but there are certain individuals on Fox News that it's beginning to appear as though that they've chosen to safeguard their job and their paycheck versus speaking the truth. So, well, on that note, and I just want to remind people that don't lose hope, as I said. Yes, we're on a tight deadline here. Yes, the Electoral College is next month. Yes, I know that in January, whoever it is, the inauguration day is forthcoming. But just remember, and by the way, in Georgia, we do have a runoff election for not one, but two Senate races. Because their laws, they're quite frankly ridiculous. They basically say you have to have a certain percentage, and when they don't have a certain percentage, it goes to a runoff. Well, we have not one but two races where that has taken place. So, and by the way, just my personal commentary on the Senate in general. I believe that the Senate should have never have made it so that the popular vote. It's not that I don't want the will of the people to be expressed in who represents us. I'm just saying, the Founding Fathers, they were all about balance of power, distributing the power equally among the branches of government. The Senate was supposed to be a representation of the state legislators, and back in the day, the legislators of each state would choose who their senators, was and were. And they changed that at some point. Many years later, the people that were in government thereafter decided we wanted to change it to popular vote of each state. I think that's wrong because it politicizes the seat even more. It should be something that the state legislator, just as they do with choosing the electors for the Electoral College. So, but that's just my personal opinion on the matter. But don't lose hope. Trump and the Patriots, they are in control. God is in control, and we are going to win. It does look dark, but we have to go through the darkness to get to the other side. But look what's happening while we're in this period of darkness as it pertains to this election. We're seeing the illusion of choice with these election systems where they were behind the scenes altering the data. They were manipulating it. It's now being forced into the open. The thing is, Trump won in such a massive landslide, it could not offset all of their voter fraud. That's why you saw them stop the counting. I mean, who does that? Stop counting the votes that night? And by the way, Election Day is Election Day. It's not. You're not supposed to kick the can down the road and arbitrarily say a point there later is when you actually stop accepting votes. No, it's Election Day. That's the constitutional. That's the by law. Election Day is Election Day. You can vote in early voting, but that's because you're voting to be effective on Election Day. If when I did my ballot, it was pre-printed and all, but they don't put the date at the top where when you actually voted, it said November 3, 2020, because that's election day. If you vote after that, it's null and void. That's why Trump says count every legal vote, because every legal vote should be counted, must be counted. But every illegal vote should not be counted. And that's, you see, it turns out we're learning new information that people were literally having their addresses, they were using post offices. Instead of post office box, they would have the street address for the post office and then do something like apartment and then a number. I mean, it's ridiculous. Or unit, whatever. It's ridiculous. It may be one thing if for some other purpose, like sending a package and the post office decides to accept that. That's different. We're talking about an election. If you where you live, that's your address. And I'm pretty sure that people do not live at the post office. Okay? So anyways, but just to reiterate one more time, God is in control. I believe that it is God's will that Trump have a second term. All this evil of the deep state, their attempt to destroy our republic, is being exposed. It's being brought to bear. And I think, I just truly believe that at the end of the day, we will come out on top. But just don't lose hope. Do not let the mainstream media manipulate you about the election or about the masks or about the coronavirus and all this stuff. We are going to win. And our best days of our country are ahead of us. It just is. Our best days as America is ahead of us. We are one nation under God. We are a truly blessed country. And I think for Thanksgiving, we should all be grateful to live in a country where we have rights. We have rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, that the Constitution does not give us rights. It is confirming what is already our rights, because we are made in the image of God. We are, by the very nature of being born as a man or woman, when you're born as an infant, you have rights. And it's not given or taken away by the government. And when they try to put in these rules about mask mandates and closing down businesses and such, they don't do any due process. They just sign executive orders. Well, in my opinion, they're null and void on its face. So just remember that. You have to have due process. And I'm pretty sure I wasn't dragged into court to be told by a judge I have to wear a mask individually and that there was a preponderance of evidence. I mean, there was no such thing. I don't care what court out there is supposedly ruled that the governor can do what he wants. First of all, they're corrupt judges. They're bought off. But second of all, and they're deep staters. But second of all, these courts, they cannot issue blanket rulings. And actually, they're not rulings; they're opinions. By the way, that's the more accurate term. But, anyways, I've run over my time. But I want to just thank you for tuning into the Citizen Report. Please come to my website as well, thecitizenreport.weebly.com. I'm going to be updating that website soon. And reach out to me. You can get in touch with me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. All of those sites, and on Parler as well. You can find me on Parler at Real Jonathan Shannon, on Twitter at The Jonathan News, on Facebook, just my first and last name, Jonathan Shannon. Instagram, you can find me at Jonathan Shannon 96, and on YouTube, where that is where I post the Citizen Report broadcasts, at least for now. Use my full name, Jonathan Ryan Shannon. So, on that note, God bless each and every one of you, and happy Thanksgiving. And I hope that don't just ignore the governors, ignore them. Live your life, be with your family, and just be an American. We are a free people, one nation under God, a Christian nation. So on that note, thank you for watching the Citizen Report. God bless each and every one of you, and happy Thanksgiving. And I'll see you right back here again next time. Have a good night, everyone.